Hello there. Welcome to this round of Just the Discs. My name is Brian, and we talk about Blu-rays here. And today I am going to talk to you about A Hard Day's Night from Criterion. This is the new 4K Blu-ray combo pack. And this film, of course, is a classic and highly influential in its way. It came out in 1964. And it, of course, stars all four Beatles, and it was directed by the great Richard Lester, who is a director I like very much. He made some really interesting British films, including The Knack and How to Get It, which ties into this film in a little bit of a way in terms of the stylistics of it. He just really was one of those guys that was sort of an editor director in a way. And anyway, I'm getting off track. Okay. So let's talk about where this comes in the Beatles evolution, if you will. There's a nice feature on here. Actually, there's a lot, many of which are ported over from the previous Blu-ray DVD combo pack. And they talk about, there's one that specifically talks about the history of the Beatles, and in this case, it talks about how the Beatles were, already about halfway through what would be their entire run as a band. Now, you have to think about it in terms of the very beginnings of things when, John, Paul, and George were getting together, even before they were technically the Beatles. That was around, say, 1958. Okay, so if you think about it from the point of view of 1958 is sort of ground zero for them. 1964 is what, 6 or 7 years, into their existence as a group, and then they only last 13 years. So it's about halfway through their run, and I think that's an interesting thing as a perspective on, the fact that people think of this as like their big breakout, and it kind of was, but I mean, they were just really getting a foothold in the UK around this time, and it was right around this time that they would go on the Ed Sullivan Show and completely explode in their popularity. And so it's a very interesting, focal point in terms of so many things, including, where they're going to take off. There's a lot in the movie that talks about how the United Artists basically got on board to make the film. David Picker was a VP of production and marketing at the time, and he gets word that the Beatles manager and has been trying to set up a movie, and they want to do a movie, and he asks about publishing, he asks about a soundtrack album, and once they hear that they're going to get a little bit of publishing and a soundtrack album out of it, David Picker's good to go. He is like, whatever this does, it's probably going to be good enough. They don't really know the Beatles yet. The Beatles haven't completely become what they will be, but they know of them, right? So I think it's interesting that at the time it was not a risk or anything, but it was also like, well, we need to get this film done because we don't know how long they're going to be popular for. And I think that is an intriguing thought, just to be thinking about the Beatles as a flash in the pan, which, to be fair, at the time, the folks involved don't really know what's going to happen. They don't know the longevity of this band. Okay. So anyway, let's talk about the film. So I will say this, after having watched, Get Back, this movie and rewatching this gave me a whole new perspective on George Harrison and how I view him in the movie. And he plays so much more innocent and like a child than I had even really thought about. There's several incidents of clumsiness for him. I mean, famously in the first shot of the film, when the Beatles are running towards the camera, he falls down. He trips. And Ringo falls over him. And by the way, I kind of got a little burnt on seeing that shot because they use it in just about every special feature that's on the disc, So there's tons of repetition of that shot. So you get to see George Harrison fall over probably 7 or 8 times if you watch all the features on this Blu-ray. Okay. So anyway, there's a couple other incidences, like he knocks over an amp at one point. He is getting on a helicopter and his shoe falls off. So there's just kind of these bits of clumsiness that played much more poignant in a way now after having seen Get Back. And I thought that was interesting. It's also interesting, like I said, in terms of where the Beatles were when this came out, and in terms of jukebox musicals themselves, which is what this was kind of categorized as, was the kind of film that some studios were doing cheaply, things like Rock Around the Clock with Bill Haley and the Comets, where you have a band that can't really act that well, but they can sing, and you sort of make a plot around them and make a movie out of it. And they don't do amazingly well, but, they do well enough. And so this is going to be one of those, and so I think it's fascinating that it's the best of those for sure. And part of that has to do with, obviously, the Beatles. And another part of it has to do with Richard Lester. And Richard Lester gets involved with this film because he's a TV director. He's worked with the Goons, who are a comedy troupe that includes Peter Sellers. And they were very popular at the time. The Beatles were fans of the Goons. And so they were all on board with Richard Lester. And, Richard Lester, when he was hired, he talked to David Picker, and he was like, what is this movie supposed to be? And Picker's like, you know what? It's up to you. It's up to you what this movie can be. And so that, I think, really freed him up to kind of make this amazing, as I've said many times, influential film that is, to this day, in terms of the editing, in terms of the way that they shoot the music video sections of the film, it is, the grandfather of MTV. In fact, at one point, Lester mentions getting a parchment or something from MTV, calling him the grandfather of it or whatever. And he said he asked for a blood test or something funny like that. But anyway, if you watch this movie and you see how he shoots those scenes and edits those scenes, you can see the beginnings of modern music videos. It's all in here, and so anyway, Lester says that he was trying to adapt the best bits of the French New Wave into this and mix surreal comedy in there as well. He says, he's quoted as saying, "I adore editing, I hate filmmaking." And you can definitely see that in his style here. There's a lot of editing, and it really wouldn't be the film it is without that. So the film was really well received by critics, by fans, but also critically. And the Beatles were seen as kind of doing a Marx Brothers sort of thing. And so I always thought that was kind of amusing. And let's see here. There's a couple good stories that come out. I'll get into the features in a second here. But one that I remember Richard Lester telling is a story about the clapper loader, who at the end of the first day of shooting was carrying 8 cans of film negative from the day's shoot. And then he's suddenly besieged by screaming fans. He was 24 and had a similar haircut to the Beatles. And I think they mistaked him for one of the Beatles, and he panicked and he started to run to try and get away. And he ended up dropping and spilling half of the day's shoot all over the train tracks. And he was just running for his life. So I guess they had to reshoot some stuff. But that's sort of an indication of how crazy things were going to get for the Beatles. And also the script was sort of based on this idea that they were captives of their own fame. And you kind of see that in the film a little bit. There's another fascinating story about one of the cameramen on one of the concert shoot sections of the film where they had 6 cameramen set up. And a few days later, he was suffering from pain in his back teeth. And it turned out the dentist theorized that it was likely the sound of the high-pitched screaming that was going out at the concert had loosened some of his dental work or done something to his teeth, which I just thought was kind of an extraordinary story. But anyway, so let's talk about extras here. Well, let's show you what you get. So you get your 4K and your Blu-ray. Actually have the Blu-ray in my player right now, but you can see the Blu-ray would go there. Here's the 4K, and then you get this wonderful, softback book, which is the same one I believe that you got with the Blu-ray DVD set. Looks the same to me. But there could be new stuff in here. I'm not actually sure about that. So that, goes all in like this, okay? And then you get a nice case. It's actually like very much the case that you got with the other set. And I'm not sure about new features here because, I'm just not sure if they've added much in terms of features, but you get the new 4K digital restoration approved by Richard Lester with 3 audio options, a monaural soundtrack, as well as a 5.1 and surround mixes supervised by sound producer Giles Martin at Abbey Road Studios, presented in uncompressed monaural, uncompressed stereo, and DTS HD master audio. 1 4K UHD disc of the film presented in Dolby Vision HDR, and it looks great, by the way. It's beautiful black and white. The grain structure is wonderful. It's just absolutely, I love it. I love the way it looks. I love the grit of it. I love that they shot it in black and white, and it looks wonderful in 4K. Let's see here. Audio commentary featuring the cast and crew in their own voices, a program featuring 1964 interviews with the Beatles, behind-the-scenes footage and photos. You Can't Do That, The Making of a Hard Day's Night, a 1994 documentary by producer Walter Shenson, including an outtake performance by the Beatles. Things They Said Today, a 2002 documentary about the film featuring Richard Lester, music producer George Martin, screenwriter Alan Owen, and cinematographer Gilbert Taylor. Picture-wise, a program about Lester's early work featuring a 2014 audio interview with Lester. The Jumping, Running, Standing Still film from 1960, which is a weird sort of musical thing that he did that's one of his sort of calling cards that got him some jobs. I think the TV work definitely helped a lot too, though. I think he made that film for like 70 pounds or something ridiculous. It's an Oscar-nominated short, by the way. Anatomy of a Style, a 2014 program on Lester's methods. Interview from 2014 with the Beatles biographer Mark Lewinson. That's the one where they go through the history and talk about them as a whole and where they were when this came out. And an essay by critic Howard Hampton and excerpts from 1970 interview with Richard Lester included in the booklet. So just a really nice package and a great new 4K from the folks at Criterion. Sorry, my dog's a little upset in the background here. But anyway, I just want to say definitely check it out. It is worth your time and a very worthy 4K entry from Criterion. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys very soon. Bye-bye.